Hello, and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is May 3rd, 2018. I had to think about it for a second. I almost said April. And this is episode 570. I am your host, James Jones, and I'm joined today by Mr. John Lindeman.
It's great to be here, James.
It's great to have you, John. Mr. Guillaume Vayette.
It has been a long week. I also feel like it's April.
It's, we're still pretty close to April, so I'll let you round down back into it. And returning to us this week is Mr. Greg Lay.
Ahoy, everyone.
Welcome back, Greg.
Yep, good to be back.
Josh Allen in his pocket as well. Very good, Greg.
I'm more excited to have one of James' boys, Edmonds. That's more, kind of instantly gratifying, I think, for us this year.
He is a joy to watch.
It's going to be good. I feel confident of that. The quarterback, I will never feel confident about a quarterback.
I will say we very, very closely considered naming last week's episode something along the lines of "Don't look at your draftee's Twitter account."
Words to live by.
But I felt like the reference to that had to get cut out of the show, so the episode title didn't make any sense. But we're not here to talk about the unfortunate tweets of high school children who are now becoming millionaires. You too can become that. We're going to stay here to talk about video games. And so to do that, I'm going to let Greg kick us off with new business this week.
Yep, quick word before I go into the promised resolution on Layton versus Wright, which I finally did finish this
tease.
week. It took me. I started playing that last year. I'm not kidding, but it took a while. But I do want to quickly mention Pinball FX update on Switch. So we had a little bit of a saga with this. Who at one point it's no, we're not doing 60 frames handheld and 1080p docked patch anymore, and then they were doing it, and now it's actually materialized. I only had time to have a quick little dabble on one of the tables, but it seems good. It's not something that we talked about this before. It's like a deal breaker with pinball for me, but it helps, in terms of the smooth tracking of the ball. As it's rolling down the table is definitely nice. I still kind of feel like I probably won't go all in on Switch pinball until I get that sweet vertical grip action going on whenever that eventually happens. But it was funny to me because when the Pinball Arcade from Farsight, who also, the Stern Pinball Arcade is them too, of course, briefly, like a comet, showed up in the North American Switch eShop. It kind of was touting the fact that they'd added the vertical mode and that, they were 60 frames a second and FX Pinball was not. So, hey, we're the real cool kids now. But then, it had to be pulled down for rights reasons or whatever it is, and it still isn't back up. And now, what
is going on with that?
The Zen Pinball, FX Pinball FX is actually, kind of caught up to that now. So, sad, unfortunately. But I guess, with that many tables, it is an incredible, they've got, however many, I can't remember what season they're up to now. So, 6 or 7, but it's a lot of tables with a lot of licensing involved, and clearly something was not taken care of properly relative to the new platform. And so we're still waiting for that to kind of officially come back.
I want them to have just made a table with a license they didn't have. They just said no, we're gonna make a table on this, and if they complain, we'll deal with it. And then they immediately complain.
I say it must be something to do with this, new platform we have, because obviously they maintain all these on PS4 and Xbox One, and so it can't be sort of pure outright problem. It must be something specific to extending that license into a new platform that some kind of box hasn't got ticked somewhere or whatever. But so I look forward to putting more time into those pinball games when you can have the kind of preferred vertical orientation in a more convenient format. And then, like I said, I did want to finish off Phoenix Wright and Layton versus Phoenix Wright this as soon as I can, even though, like I said, it dragged on for a long time, because May's looking pretty busy. Things are really going to start to run, even though like Dark Souls, which I was thinking of getting at the end of the month, got delayed.
Yeah.
Lumines got sort of delayed a little bit. They had said May before, but now that we've got a hard date, it's in June. But still, there's a lot of Runner 3s coming. Yoku's Island Express on the sort of pinball tip is coming, which I'm pretty interested in at the end of the month. So this, and then you got Mega Man collection, Street Fighter collection, lots of stuff I'm not thinking of right now, and it really kind of
Ikaruga, maybe, Greg?
Ikaruga, you just got a date at the end of this month. That's another vertical job. I mean, it's a far cry from the old summer of 2 offer games, because it keeps going. June, July both look pretty juicy this year. Octopath is July.
Oh,
I'm interested in Mario Tennis. I'm hopeful for that in June. There's where there'll be more stuff at E3. I think I did want to clear the deck a little bit before some of this stuff really starts to ramp up. And like I said, I've been playing Felix Wright and Layton. Going back to last year when it was on sale digitally. It's one of these things where, again, I just needed to be kind of really reminded that, I did want to play that. I just haven't got around to it. And it was a digital sale, because it's never really got that cheap it's the physical cartridge over here. I don't know whether that's because in terms of there weren't as many made where you've got this kind of licensing situation, this crossover on 3DS. But yeah, it's like 4 years old now.
something like that, yeah.
Not the most current thing, but really, I've been wanting to play an Ace Attorney, at least involved, game since I finished Ghost Trick, which was 7 years ago. But it was always kind of when's the best time, what's the best one to do it with, and this kind of thing. And not long after I finished Ghost Trick is where we kind of was hearing about this crossover for 3DS. And so I thought, well, that could be a good kind of way in, because I do know Layton. I like Layton. For the record, I've played the first 3 games and then Miracle Mask on top of that. So pretty good helping of Layton games down the years. I think maybe that's the best way to get into it. Then I was kind of really looking forward to a great Ace Attorney, maybe getting localized with the period setting and all that. I thought that would be cool, but they never did localize that. So I've just sort of fumbled my way and never actually played one. And so finally, with this kind of rare digital sale, I thought, let's do it and sort of first dive into the Ace Attorney world. And it's for the most part, it's been an enjoyable experience. Like I said, it's been so drawn out because I've used it as kind of like reading a book before bed. Like that's been kind of a little wind down thing. I've limited it to that. I haven't really kind of put in like a bunch of hours in a short period of time. It's been very kind of incremental, which I think in some ways is probably beneficial for the experience in terms of limiting some of the kind of more repetitious elements of it. But and also just I guess the biggest downside of that is perhaps not having every aspect of the narrative be as fresh in your mind if you don't touch it for a few weeks at a time or whatever. But yeah, I mean, most of what I've kind of observed is pretty consistent with the critical reception back then, which I guess was mainly that like the latent component of it. The puzzles are kind of a bit gentle, they're not particularly challenging. I don't know whether that was because they kind of felt like there's not as much kind of obviously it's not strictly logic puzzle solving like it would be in Layton, because you have got these trial sequences out of Ace Attorney, so kind of maybe they didn't feel like they had the same scope to like ramp up in difficulty as they do in a full-on Layton game. And it's about sort of 70 puzzles, I think, and which was less than you would typically see in a strictly Layton game.
It's usually about 130.
Yeah, and none of them were that difficult. I mean, it's kind of nice. It's always, I would have thought, having fewer puzzles in a Layton game could be a blessing, from the point of view that it might eliminate some of the ones that feel like they're just kind of padding, so there's usually some that just kind of feel like they're there to make up the numbers, and that wouldn't be so much of a problem if you've got fewer of them. But yeah, it more just the fact that they just weren't that tricky in this case, but not particularly poor or anything. But I think the fact that you've got the Layton sequences being broken up by the Ace Attorney kind of trial format is quite welcome to me, having already played 4 Layton games. Having that come in to kind of change things up a bit kind of helped kind of make it more alluring of a prospect to actually go through this sort of somewhat familiar kind of structure again. And yeah, I guess the big sort of change that this one had for an Ace Attorney game, but like I say, I've not played others to kind of compare, but it's the whole sort of group witness component to it in the trials, which certainly has some kind of amusing aspects to it when you're kind of cross-examining like a 10 incompetent clock tower guards at once. It's it's got the kind of the sense of I haven't played Ace Attorney, but I did play Ghost Trick, and it definitely got some of the the same kind of sense of humour and writing in there. It nails its colours to the mast early with the puns, and I mean I knew what to expect. James has talked about some of the truly
they're out of control.
Truly, I mean, like you start off with somebody being in, shall we say, an automobile accident, and then they are called Carmine Accidente. I mean, straight away, like, okay, yeah, this is what's happening.
It quickly rises to level of problem.
And the witch, your principal sort of opponent in these witch trials that are happening in this fantasy world that Layton and Wright are apparently drawn into is called Inquisitor Barnum. I mean.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
When I say it quickly becomes a problem, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it doesn't stop. I mean, it hits you early, and it keeps working the body shots all throughout.
The worst...
But it kind of you go along. I went along with it, kind of thing, because I did all overall kind of like the humour and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the only real sort of gripe I had about the trial sequences was just that sometimes some of the kind of sort of flourish kind of animations that they have for the characters when they're delivering their dialogue just felt like they were overused or a little bit too drawn out. Like how many times I saw Barnum draw his sword and point it. It just felt like, especially when you're reading a decent clip, it just feels a bit like that animation needs to be a bit shorter or just used less often, or so just to help the pacing a little bit. But those being fresher, having not played Ace Attorney before, and the writing in them and the humour in them was kind of felt like the meat of the game to me, even though it was pretty half and half. Between the sort of exploring the town and poking around and getting your hint coins and your puzzles with Layton, the trials were my favourite part of the game. So I think it set me up pretty well for playing full on Ace Attorney games sometime in the future. But I have to say, with this, after Ghost Trick and various Layton games, the bar was set pretty high for ridiculous ending. I needed a ridiculous ending. I was expecting a ridiculous ending, and I got one.
Oh,
but
you sure did.
The final trial is this incredibly long sort of sequence, twists and turns, and everything you'd expect and want from this sort of thing in terms of just the absurdity kind of getting layered on. Pretty thickly, but also I was not for all the things I was expecting, for all the craziness I was expecting, I was not expecting it to remind me of Dark City, the sort of sci-fi movie from the 90s, but it did, because it's mad. is absolutely mad. But I wouldn't have had it any other way. That is what I wanted from it, and that's what I got. So I walked away pretty satisfied from that. But like I say, I can't really speak to where it stands in the pantheon of Ace Attorney stuff. But I kind of feel like for me as somebody who likes Layton games, kind of needed that kind of extra element. It'd be a little bit weird going back to a Layton game, like a pure one after this. Although, even with some of the pure Layton games later on, this kind of a feeling from what I've gathered of reviews that the puzzles are not as kind of high quality in those these days anyway.
No, the last one, the one that had to do Puzzle Masters puzzles, were just terrible. It's the first game I didn't clear all the puzzles in. And not because they were hard, but because I just got tired of looking for them.
Now that's a shame to me, but I guess these are things that happen when, like you said, obviously the previous sort of puzzle master passed away, didn't he? So
yeah, I will say that the thing about the Layton series usually has big giant reveal endings as well.
Yeah, I love the way that it's always kind of like, oh no, it's not as crazy as you think it is. Like, right. Of course it's not time travel. That couldn't happen. An underground replica of London that becomes a giant mech, though. That can happen.
That could happen. But nobody knows is there.
Yeah, like that's totally can happen. But time travel, no, screw that. What, you an idiot?
The Ace Attorney games will have their weird twists too, but usually it's just more like a person you didn't expect was involved in this, or there's a layer to this you didn't see coming, because they fully embrace the idea of supernatural stuff. They're like, no, supernatural stuff happens. Now, I
did like the way that they kind of said, okay, like I said, it's witch trials, it's magic exists in this world, but it's like, okay, well, how can we kind of actually, in that event, like have a trial, when it's all sort of seemingly irrational, but it's like, oh, no, there are rules,
right.
That witches need certain things to cast certain spells, and there are only certain spells and all this kind of stuff, so that you actually do kind of, can actually use like deductive reasoning to point out that somebody's testimony doesn't add up or all that kind of thing. It's a fun little exercise into the way it's sort of dressed up, and it's like, okay, well, how are we going to kind of create a sort of problem to be solved out of this magic stuff? But they do pretty well.
I do quite enjoy that the amount of world building that went into that game. So Takumi was the lead writer on this game, and it shows. And I got the impression, you mentioned the twist, I got the impression that he enjoyed writing into Layton, because this is largely Layton-esque in terms of like the world setup, because Ace Attorney World always tries to be relatively kind of like the real world, whereas Layton just says, fuck it, I don't care. Yeah, sure, casino machine gun, I don't give a crap, whatever, let's just go nuts. But like this one is, it's not a good Layton game in terms of its puzzle quality and how it puts those together, and it's not a good Ace Attorney game because a lot of the cases are really good. It's just that something feels a little bit off with them.
I guess, for me, like I say, I'm not having the frame of reference with the other games in the series, but the biggest issue I'd have with the cases, in some ways it was kind of a strength because it kept like a sort of through narrative, for me to keep sort of a hold of as I was playing this very gradually. But there is a fair amount of repetition in terms of who's on trial and who you're going up against in the trial and what sort of topics are kind of being covered in them.
So I did, and I noticed this when it came out. The animations are really, really, really pretty. Like they put a lot of work into them, and they have a lot of frames. But as you noted, the consequence of that is they have a lot of frames, and the game only runs at aspirationally runs at 30.
So some of those cases where you're getting a bunch of people together, it does chug a bit, which is pretty much irrelevant for this game.
It looks really good.
The presentation, the music too. I think it's top notch.
The music's amazing.
Yeah,
I think it's the first song I picked for a closing theme for the show.
Again, well, I remember we used that, and I mean, it just that was another reason, kind of why I played it really slowly, because before bed, I'm always going to have the headphones in and actually absorb it, rather than just like where I play a lot of portable games. That's not going to happen.
For me, the moment where that game sort of like clinched where it was going, and to avoid a spoiler, I'll just say like one noun that you'll be able to pick together. The reveal of the statue spell.
Oh, yes.
The absolute nonsense video that plays when that happens and everyone's reaction to it, and me as a veteran of both series looking at it going, I know this isn't fucking what you're saying it is, so like let's just get through this right now. And then like they make you wait for the reveal on that for a long time. Like multiple hours. It's like, oh my god, like I got invested in how are they going to undo this.
It's a corker, isn't it? I mean, what they come up with.
It's like, how are you going to fix this? Oh, that's how you fix this, you son of a bitch. I do like though that they were able to, like, cause both of these series can write story twists that get me upset at them. Like I'm invested in, I'll get invested, and then they'll just hit you with something you're not expecting, and I'll get like, fuck you, no. But like the Ace Attorney games that have come out recently, like there was a good one in the first 3DS game, like a good solid twist. But the second one, like the big reveal, the one that sort of makes everything work, because that's how these games are structured. Both of these series is that like there's always this one last big mystery that sort of unlocks everything.
Yeah,
and in this one, it's a doozy. But like I called the shot on the first one, or on the most recent Ace Attorney game, like pretty much on the second case. This one I literally couldn't figure it out as they were revealing it to me.
It's true. It's
because my brain is just rejecting it. It's like, no.
Out there. I mean, it is out there. I've always done that's what I'm here for. You know, to me, that wouldn't make me angry. I'm like, bring it on. But
yeah, I really love the. I don't know if you've looked at the. I guess it's DLC, sort of.
My understanding was it was like time unlocked, kind of.
Yeah,
like you just got to connect to the internet. So yeah, I haven't been through all that stuff yet. I understand.
Oh, it's really good.
Yeah.
Basically, it's just like it's a year later, and they're just gonna go talk to these people to see like how is your life going, and you realize immediately like what the fuck is going on in this stupid world. Oh, I really enjoyed it. I was the time lock was every week they would give you one. They'd give you one unlock, and it would either be art or on an alternate week it'd be like a little story. And I remember being really bummed out the weeks it was art. Because it was like, oh, and the art's really good. Like normally that art would be super cool to look at, but like the story sequences are so dumb. Oh, it's great. I really am kind of disappointed this game didn't do better, because there is definitely room here to have done more.
I guess some of it is it kind of maybe probably missed the peak of Layton's popularity. That's for sure.
Oh yeah,
you know, like it kind of 2014. It's quite a while ago now, but in terms of sort of when Layton was at his most relevant, I think it was a lot closer when they actually announced this collaboration than when the game finally, especially got localized.
We got it very late.
Yeah.
Now what I do like is that it basically has no real concern for how much of the canon you absorbed, but if you know a lot of it like gives you little rewards, like little weird in-jokes. It's just really, I kind of want to play it again, but it is super long.
It is, yeah. I mean, I guess that's the thing, because you've got these sort of two distinct. That was. I mean, I remember. Yeah, when I said on the show, like, oh yeah, I think I'm pretty near the end. Like, I wasn't that near the end. It went on quite a bit longer than I was expecting. So I guess because you got to have these two separate styles, though, they probably felt like you need a certain amount of time for them to breathe and, like I said, kind of progress. And even then, maybe it's a little bit, like I said, with the difficulty of the puzzles, or maybe it's a little bit stunted, because half the game isn't as long as a standalone game in these series would be.
I'll admit, like, I really enjoyed how they basically blended characters from these two distinct series. It actually did a pretty good job of it. In the end, a lot of the interaction became like some of my favorite parts. Because I mean, let's be honest. Like Luke is insufferable, but he's relatively intelligent for his age, whereas Maya's just she's special. And like there's a lot of weird interactions where it's like, oh, he's actually way smarter than the adult in the room. Okay. It's just a really like well put together presentation layer, video. Like there's a lot of full motion video that looks really good.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's a ton of voice acting. Like a crazy amount of voice acting for a 3DS game. There's just a ton going on in this thing that I just really appreciate the work that went into it, even if, it is probably too long. It is probably too drawn out.
Yeah, like I say, I think it's probably like from the situation of feeling like you need to get like both the constituent series kind of quotient, up or right or whatever. But I like Felix Wright just sort of being more of an everyman guy in a Layton series, because there usually isn't somebody
everyone in the Layton world is a lunatic.
Yeah, like Layton's obviously kind of always, super gentlemanly, and he knows even more than he lets on, but he knows plenty. And then Luke is, like you said, sort of meant a bit of sort of prodigy and talks to animals. Like, he's not relatable in the slightest. It kind of was nice to have somebody in there to kind of give voice to that feeling of like, what is all this bollocks going on around me?
And so that works. That's part of why this whole collaboration worked really well, because that's his role in his games.
I would imagine, that's the feeling I got. Yeah,
everyone else is a lunatic in the Ace Attorney world. Like, I mean, there's a prosecutor who walks into court with a bullwhip, and nobody says anything, and she regularly whips the judge, and like he's the only person who goes like, yeah, this isn't right. This is abnormal. Everybody else is just like, no, that happens. She's a star prosecutor. It's like, what? No. The fuck does that mean? So it was just fun. Like, it was fun to see those characters out of their normal environment. But like, I got to imagine that game cost a fortune to make.
Yeah. The production values are even now that it's an older game, and obviously a portable gaming's moved on and all that kind of stuff, but it's pretty impeccable in a lot of ways. So yeah, you can imagine there was a fair bit invested in it.
Any other thoughts?
No, I enjoyed it, and like I said, I get it now. It's a question of where to go next for my Ace Attorney Takumi fix. Really, I would like to replay Ghost Trick sometime.
It's also really good.
That was, I haven't played it since 7 years ago when I finished it originally. But I should probably do an Ace Attorney game first. It makes more sense.
Collection is on sale periodically.
Oh yeah, they're very good about that. I've been tempted, but I kind of in the end very belatedly stuck to my plan in the absence of the great Ace Attorney to do Layton versus Wright.
Yeah, I never got past the first game in the collection. I played the first game in like a weekend because I know that game backwards and forwards, and then I played it over like Christmas weekend. So like there's a scene that takes place on Christmas Eve, and I'm like, that's me, which was not planned. I'd forgotten the game takes place around Christmas, and then I got to game 2, which is the weaker one in the trio, and I'm like, no, you know what? I'll pass. I'll get to that someday. And then I never did. But if you can get that on sale, that's a lot of game.
Yeah.
But there is Ace Attorney coming to Switch, so that might be they might.
Yeah, that's the kind of like I said, this is the trap I got caught in before. It's like, well, there might be this on the horizon, and then you end up just kind of doing nothing. But we're back to that again with like, well, something's going to show up on Switch, so let's wait and see, kind of thing.
So Capcom has obviously been very willing to put collections on Switch.
Oh, well, they are now, yeah.
Yeah, they are now. And these assets that make the 3DS game were from the the iPhone, iPad, touch games. They're all HD assets. So in theory, this should be doable relatively easily, but we'll see. Cool. All right, Guillaume. Actually, no, Guillaume. You're gonna go third. I'm sorry. I will go next. So I am going to drop my one time to talk about Yakuza 6 card because I'm about 2 hours from the end, which means I'll finish it in about 16 more hours because of all the side bullshit that I'll probably do in the meantime. So I'm not going to dig too much into what this game is. I've talked about the Yakuza games a lot, and it's still that. But this is the first game for their new engine, a PS4 engine. So the engine that ran the most recent Yakuza games originated all the way back right around the launch of the PS3 in Yakuza 3. It is an old-ass engine. And what they got out of it was always really impressive. Like, how Tokyo looks in that game was always really, like, it was on point. You know, how they managed things like lighting and a billion light sources, because walking through parts of Tokyo is just walking through hallways made entirely of light bulbs. This game makes all of those games look like absolute shit. Like, it's staggering sometimes to throw it in first person mode and just walk around. And it's like all the lighting, the lights that are like contrasting with one another because they're different colored lights. The face technology was really good in like the last 2 Yakuza games, Zero and Kiwami. In this game, they're staggering. Like lines on faces in full detail. Moments where it feels like I'm looking at video. Like really, really, really good stuff. Really well animated most of the time. There are some times where people's mouths are just moving like flaps, but in general, like motion capture on faces from the looks of it. Really, really inspired, like really solid acting work by a lot of the characters that comes through both in their speaking and in the facial capture. The engine, from a tech standpoint, fucking amazing. And the biggest change to what the engine can do now is because it's not built for the PS3. All of this shit can exist in world. So when you're running around, it is in world, but when the fights start, what would happen in the previous games is you were still technically in world, but it would put this box around you and you were kind of sequestered out, so they'd be like loading in and out of fights. In this game, the fights are in universe. Like, they're in the same engine. They're in the same... Like, it's not like you're loading in and out of the space. Fights are quick. They start and they end. Sometimes they end before the graphic on screen telling me their street punks has gone away because I've put them all in body bags before it's time to wrap up. And the biggest change in how that plays in is that the world is more interactive. In a lot of ways. There's just a lot more stuff that you can interact with than the previous games. In the previous games, you could like pick up a bike on the side of the road and smash somebody's head through it, or bring it down, or when they're on the ground, drop it on them and then jump on top of it to smash it. Like, yeah, you could do all that stuff, but and all that stuff would just kind of respawn when the fight ended. Or actually, it would spawn in when the fight started, and then it wouldn't be there when it ended. In this game, all these items, all these things that are interactable in a fight exist prior to a fight starting. They're just in the world. And that means that if you break them in a fight, they stay broken. This also means that they technically can be broken outside of fights, even though you can't attack anyone. So a lot of times Kiryu's running around a ramen shop, and he's just breaking all the stools as he touches them because they're falling to debris because it's like somebody got hit with them. So a little weird. There's little weird quirks in the engine. Items fly around seemingly immune to gravity. Sometimes people do that also, sometimes leading to hilarious results where you kick someone, they bounce like a super ball, and just as a quirk of how the ragdoll and bounce played in, they end up like upright, and so that's like immediately like they bounced off the ground and landed back on their feet, which can be disorienting in a fight. Or items get kicked by one character who's trying to kick you, and it comes flying at you and does damage. But a place where it plays out really well, and this was really exciting to me. There is a restaurant chain in the game, and a lot of these restaurant chains are real because there is all kinds of money in the Yakuza series. The pornography company that is featured in the games in the series canon is a real company who pays to be in every single one of these fucking games. It is amazing that they keep doing it, but they sure do. But there's a hot wings restaurant that's been in the series forever, but you could never go in. Wild Jackson. And I've always wanted to go in because it's fucking called Wild Jackson. And it's hot wings in the middle of Japan. Like, I need to know. This game you can finally go in, and I was really excited you could finally eat there. And then a fight started right outside the restaurant, and I kicked the dude, and he went through the plate glass window in world. Like, he just shot through the glass window into the building that we were standing in front of, because these buildings actually exist in the game and aren't, like, loaded out separately. And then I was banned from the restaurant because I broke the window. So we're going to have to ask you to leave. I was very upset because I couldn't go to this restaurant I was super excited to finally eat at. Eventually you can go back in. But all these buildings, like tons and tons of buildings in the game exist, have real insides. It's not like you open it, you load to a new place, you go out and you explore it. Which doesn't seem that revolutionary because lots of games do that. But in a game that spends so much time and energy like recreating Tokyo, even though they don't call it, they call it a place that it isn't, even though it's exactly the same as the real place that has almost exactly the same name. To have them also like build all these interior spaces and let you explore them and not have to load at all. So you walk right into the Club Sega. You walk out of the back fire exit of the Club Sega, and now you're on the roof of the Club Sega, and you can just kind of keep walking, and then there's a building that you just walk inside, and there's offices, and there's nothing to interact with. It's just space that they've put together. But they went and they did it. Like there's a building where I was convinced there had to be something here, and I think a mission pops there. But largely speaking, they just said, okay, this building's been in this game for years and years and years. We've sat on the first floor is this building, is this business. On the second floor it's this one. On the third one it's this one. And now you can go in there, and sure enough, yeah, that's what's on those floors. It's just it's stuff they just couldn't do in the old game engine, and so it's really exciting to get to see that. But as a consequence of this being a new engine, of this being new tech, of requiring new art assets, there is not the opportunity for reuse that the Yakuza series prides itself on. As I joked during conversation about Yakuza 0, I've been in this same fucking office like 11 games now. Because it's just an office, they'll just change up the furniture a little bit, but it's exactly the same room. To the point where, like, I know where the doors are because I've seen this room before. They can't do that because it's all new assets. And so this game feels slight in terms of content. The story's still pretty long, and it's really going places. Get back to that Layton versus Wright. This one's going places. But there's not as much side stuff as there usually is. There's not as many mini games. There's not as many like some of them aren't as evolved. Like the Hostess Club stuff usually has like big long stories for every girl you meet there. This one, not really. It's just like, here's some cards you can play. It's like It's like playing like Cards Against Humanity to get her attention. It's not particularly involved, and then you get to talk to her once, and then you can go do one of the 2 karaoke songs because there's less of those now too. Because again, new engine, all this new tech. You can spearfish, which is a lot of fun. You just dive underwater and spearfish in like a scrolling shooter, or not scrolling shooter, like a light gun game. And then you fight a giant sea creature at the end, like a supersized octopus or a big angry shark. And Kiryu will exclaim things like, "I hate this fucking shark," while he's shooting spears at it. It's kind of stupid, but really fun. And there's like a fully put together baseball simulator. It's weird. But a lot of the stuff you expect is just not there. That's going to be there in Kiwami too, though, because I've already seen stuff from that one, and it looks ridiculous. But yeah, I just mostly want to talk about the fact that this engine, despite having some weird physics shit that happens periodically, is really impressive. This is still not a good place to start in the series, because this game expects you to have done the homework, because there are callbacks to all of the games in this one. Like they've been quite clear. This is Kiryu's final game, and so they're basically just doing like a "this is your life" in crime terms, where it's like, "Hey, do you remember this crime lord that you beat the shit out of back in 2005? Here he is." So this game would not be like new player friendly in the slightest, but it's really fucking cool, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, and it went places, and it's really impressive tech that I'm really excited to see with 2 games under their belt how it ends up looking. That is my one play on Yakuza 6, and you guys won't get to hear me talk about any Yakuza games until Yakuza 2, Kiwami 2 comes out in like a month or some bullshit like that.
Well, thankfully, we have a brief reprise, James.
It's this year. I don't know when it's coming out this year.
What a waste that Yakuza made it on the Wii U in Japan and nowhere else, and now like it's nowhere on Switch, and it's just great. We got the ports on the system that no one bought.
The Switch could definitely not do 6. Like that game, it would not be able to handle it. But I mean, obviously, it could have handled the ones built on the 3 engine. Although Zero and Kiwami, I mean, they were also on the PS3. But like, there's some stuff in there that I'm struggling to think like, how the hell did the PS3 handle this? And the answer is probably massive slowdown. But it's cool. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I'm not quite done. I'll probably finish it when we finish this podcast, or I'll spend another 20 hours with it. But one of those things will happen. But yeah, it's impressive. It's really well put together game. Guillaume.
Yeah. So quick update on Graceful Explosion Machine. I am at the top of the leaderboards for all of World 1 for my friends list. So that's what I've been doing with my life. That's
so
is that
like a come at me bro kind of thing, or
it's more of a like was this really the best use? Like, is this me living my best life? You know, and,
none of us probably our best life. I can tell you.
I felt kind of bad about the joke image I made for that chapter, but now I feel like I should have gone worse.
And like somehow there was like a fluke. Like there's in the first world, there's like the first 2 tutorial levels, and then there are like the regular levels. And the tutorial levels are not really like, you can chase a high score in them, and there are leaderboards for them, but they're, a little bit less serious because they're still introducing gameplay mechanics at that point. So it's like they're not really designed to chase a high score. But somehow I made it like to the second spot, rank 2 on the leaderboards for the second tutorial stage, through a fluke, I think, that I haven't been able to replicate. Like there's, at some point, like it introduces, I don't know, like the warp or something, and your score kind of has to reset because there's no way you can grab the power up and then have the enemies respawn early enough for you to keep your combo going. But then I don't know, somehow I did it, and I was like second on the leaderboards. So I don't know. I feel like I've made my mark. Maybe I should just finally. Yeah, that's my legacy. I'm gonna be number 2 on that leaderboard forever.
I want before this episode to come out, somebody have just jumped you, and you have to edit that out now.
Just drop me out of the top 10. Erase. Anyway, so yeah, like maybe for the rest of the game, like I'll focus on actually finishing the campaign and then maybe come back. Like it seems like that would be healthier. And probably once I finish the game, my interest will have dropped, and I won't be chasing high scores the way I have been. So anyway, we'll see. Also, there's the fact that, as Greg mentioned, Pinball FX3 has updated, and I don't know if the 60 frames per second undocked makes me better at the game, but it certainly makes the game more fun to play in undocked mode. So I might just switch to that. So that's my update for these high score chasing games. Otherwise, like I don't really have any new business. The game that I have been playing a little bit of is what is it called? River City Tokyo Rumble, which was like the River City Ransom sequel that came out on 3DS last year. Yeah, no, in 2016, September 2016. And, I got it because I was, maybe listeners remember that I was, during a certain phase, I was just playing beat-em-ups with Karen. And so during that phase, Karen got like an eShop card as a Christmas present or something, and I suggested, I think that River City Tokyo Rumble was on sale half price at that time on the eShop. So I said, oh, you should get that, and we're going to play together. And so she spent $20 on it. I spent $20 on it, and then we never touched it. And then a few months later, I thought like, oh, okay, like we're both like out and about and we have our 3DSs. Let's play co-op together. And then realized like, oh crap, this game doesn't have co-op.
Nice.
And yeah, and I felt really stupid because like it was not just my money that I wasted, it was also Karen's. And I felt stupid because, you know, I'm on a freaking Nintendo podcast. I should know this thing.
Since when do we ever worry about being accurate?
Well, at least for, you know, like I should be able to do some basic research and know what's in a game before I buy it.
Again, since when do we ever worry about that?
Anyway, but then like, you know, like kind of, I couldn't quite believe it. And I played some of the solo game and I got eventually to the part where it unlocks an AI character, a partner that fights alongside you, who never ever picks up the coins that, you know, the enemies that they beat up drop behind them. And so that's the main, like that's the co-op mode. And I just for fun, like, and also to kind of convince myself that I'm not a complete idiot, I went back and read some reviews of the game, and in almost all of them, like none of them just really bother to underline the fact that this game doesn't have 2-player co-op. And it's weird because they'll use like, I think the Destructoid review was just like the first like 3-4 paragraphs were just like, hey, remember that awesome NES game that you would play co-op with your friends? And like, well, it's back and it's everything you've ever dreamed of. And then like in paragraph 11 of the review, like, so outside of that solo mode, there is like these other multiplayer kind of versus modes. It's like, well, okay, so if there's no co-op, like first, couldn't you say that earlier, other than like once you're done actually talking about the game? And secondly, you know,
not to put too fine a point on it, that game does not need an 11-paragraph review.
Oh, but yeah, there were several more. So anyway, so that's, yeah, even the Nintendo World Report review, I think, I'm sorry, Donald, but you failed me because I'm scanning through it right now.
He's listening to this, having just posted this episode to the NeoGAF, or the Resetera thread.
I know.
And is now like dejected.
Yep.
Yeah, probably. I'm sorry, but like I'm scanning through like the review right now.
He's been force choked and has been replaced with another guy right now.
And I'm just not saying, you know, like there's mentions of like, unlike the NES original, the co-op play is mandatory after a certain point. You have 3 partners anyway, but there's barely, like, I'm not, if there's a keyword there that says like, you're not actually playing with a human being, I'm missing it. So yeah, in the game itself, you know, like if you're just going to look at the bullet points, it's going to say it's for 1 to 4 players. And I kind of assumed that in there somewhere that included 2-player co-op, but
well, I mean, I can see
wrong.
that then. If they actually say it's for 1 to 4 players, and it is technically, and this is a brawler. Like these are meant to be co-op,
right? But the 4-player modes are like kind of a, you know, versus mode, which. Who's going to play that? Like, I mean, like, today, in this day and age, like, or as soon as Street Fighter 2 came out, like, who's going to go back and play the Versus mode and Double Dragon, you know? Not too many people.
I mean, it's so yeah, your confusion, I understand, because it's ridiculous that they even put that game out without co-op. I'll be honest. Like, I don't get it. That seems like a massive, massive failure.
And this game was sold like full price.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did the original 3DS game have co-op?
The original 3DS game. Which one do you mean?
Because there was a 3DS game and then there was another 3DS game.
Actually. Oh, you're gonna find this pretty funny. The other game was like a half-priced game that was set in like medieval Japan, and it's a single-player game only. So at least with that one, there was no like. Well, it was pretty straightforward. You knew you were buying a single-player game, and
okay.
Yeah. So you know,
there's no
like,
pretext.
Yeah, but yeah, it's set in medieval Japan, and you're kind of like doing errands or something. Like you're kind of grinding. There's a grinding element to it, but it's also a brawler. It's just very much single-player. Yeah. So this one, I I played a bunch of it. Ultimately, it's not what I bought it for, like to be, I didn't want to be playing by myself, so I don't think I'm going to finish it. It seems to be kind of a short campaign, but it's just not that fun. It plays exactly like the NES game. Like, it's pretty much like they didn't really touch anything. And it's got that kind of, like the same sprites. The game looks good enough, but it's not mind-blowing. With the 3D on, I do enjoy sprite-based games that have, retro-looking games that have 3D, like the Sega releases, the Genesis releases that Sega did, and stuff like Cave Story had some nice, sprites that pop out of the screen stuff. So this has that, but it's something I've seen before, and anyway, it's a big disappointment.
It's a bummer.
And there's not much more to say about it. That's what I've been doing with my life. It's kind of sad.
Wow. Okay, look, like let's like fucking take it down from just complete
fine.
nihilism.
Also, and I mean, with every day you move closer to death, Guillaume. So
yeah,
just think about that.
The sweet release
aware.
of death will come, and you'll be good.
Yeah.
I mean, these are just truths, James. I mean, I don't know why you're trying to,
Why I'm trying to harsh your buzz? Is that what you're telling me? Excuse me up here?
harsh my dark buzz.
Look, we're just... Yes. You know what? No, you're right. Yes. That's. Thank you for naming the episode for me.
I guess, I've also been playing some stuff with Karen, but it's mostly like Tesla versus Lovecraft. We're still playing that. It's a whole lot of fun co-op, but mainly like we're kind of just grinding at this point. Like there's kind of a leveling up element to that game as well, where you can buy upgrades, and we're pretty close to having fully upgraded our characters, and so we keep, like, we're third on the leaderboards for the 2-player co-op mode, but the first 2 players are way ahead of us, and I'm not sure, what's up with that. Like I
on my way to steal your score, right?
I think we would need a whole lot of luck to be able to beat that. But also, like, to get to the score that we got, like, we probably played close to an hour before recording today. And so, yeah, that's a long time to sink into a game just for bragging rights. So, anyway, we'll see. If
you don't care, it isn't, though. If you don't care, it's fine. But
yeah,
if you care,
it's a lot of fun, but the game is set up like the survival mode that has leaderboards. It's set up so that the game keeps speeding up. Like the monsters get faster and faster, they get stronger, and also they take a whole lot more bullets to kill. They become bullet sponges. So a fatigue sets in just because of that. Because initially, like, you're just kind of mowing through hordes of monsters. And then you don't, and then you just like bump against them, and you're like you get like the nuke power up, and it halves their health, and you're like, what the hell? It's a nuke. This used to one shot you. So it's I don't know if listeners have good recommendations for co-op games in that vein on the Switch. I'm open to suggestions, because I think we're going to move on pretty soon.
Okay. Well, there you go. If you've got some co-op suggestions, let us hear it. But with that is going to do it for New Business. Because, John, I don't believe you had anything you want to talk about this week, did you?
No, I mean, just the one thing that talking about living your best life.
You're gonna swerve on me.
I'm gonna swerve on you just briefly. I'm not gonna.
Fucking shit, John. We planned.
What? Sorry, James. Am I keeping you from something? Is there something else you want to do right now? Am I interrupting you? I apologize.
You're interrupting my living, John. So go live your best life. What do you got for me?
Just speaking of living my best life, I wanted to, just say, living my best life. I'm still playing Morrowind, right? Living my best life was sitting there while watching a wrestling pay-per-view, and in the background hitting the A button probably about 10,000 times to get my speechcraft up to 100 over about 3 hours. But it really helped.
God.
It really helped. Because that is Elder Scrolls right there. At least Morrowind and Oblivion.
Just so I know, which pay-per-view were you watching?
I watched the last the Greatest Royal Rumble, which was
God,
that one, which was pretty funny. That was the one where you posted the gif of the guy falling.
Yeah,
off the of the ring,
yeah. No, I know.
That was totally ridiculous.
Oh,
it was a pretty good pay-per-view, but yeah, it was just I wanted to see the rest of it, and it was a really long pay-per-view, so I was just like, I'm gonna sit here and because speechcraft is very handy in that game because you can basically persuade anybody to do your bidding.
So did you just find an NPC and press A 1,000,000 times?
Yeah, I found the right guy, and I just sat there for 3 hours pressing A and watched my speechcraft stat go up slowly.
Video games.
Best life.
You know what? There is a certain sad, close approximation to what life is like in that.
Mm-hmm.
I need to talk to people so I get better at talking to people. I guess I'll just sit here and talk to this guy for a while.
Yep. Yeah, it's a lot to unpack there. But we're not going to do it on this show. So
I would feel better about myself right now if I could get out of this conversation. So
just pull the exit.
I'm just saying, let's just pull the ripcord on this one, and we come back. When we come back, we're going to have some listener mail, and we're going to reveal some more harsh truths about living kids. Stay tuned. We are back with listener mail. You can send your emails to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. I want to thank everyone for contributing. Our email inbox is now got lots of stuff in it with lots of unique and interesting questions we can handle, so we're going to try to work our way through them. Not doing a Lords of Thunder round today because we are just completely incapable of that. We've proven that it is no longer in our capability to do that.
It's like the aging quarterback, It's like I can't throw back across my body anymore. And
I can't.
It's probably for the best, to be honest.
I can't scramble anymore. We're basically stationary at this point. So we just, as we've calcified, we just have to keep on going.
Statuesque, James. Statuesque.
Yeah, I have been called such things. All right, so John, I'm going to have you read the first email since we didn't get to hear much of you last segment.
You just really want me to read the guy's name, don't you?
No.
Or the girl's name, I don't know, but Chariot Goblin writes.
No, I actually just wanted you to read this email. I'd forgotten about the name.
Hey, RFN crew, I'd like to thank you for playing my game, Nintendo Franchise Executioner, back on episode 558. I was hoping you could play one more round of it. The goal of this game is for each of you to kill one Nintendo franchise in each of the following pairs from history. In other words, which one would you erase from history? This time I have 4 pairs. Thanks and keep up the great work. The pairs are Paper Mario or Earthbound/Mother, Star Fox or F-Zero, Box Boy or Pushmo, Pikmin or Splatoon.
So we never settled last time we did this on does this? I mean, we have the term erased from history, which actually
this is pretty clear cut.
Yeah, it actually helps settle the conversation we had last time. So
yes.
Any downstream effects of this game existing go away. So the first one being Paper Mario or Earthbound/Mother. I'm trying to think of what the net effect of either one of those going away would be.
I mean, delete Earthbound. See ya.
I would go with Paper Mario.
Yeah, for me, the problem is if you erase Paper Mario from history, you're erasing a spin-off branch of the Mario series. You're not even necessarily...
The Mario RPG already happened.
Yeah, exactly. There was already a Super Mario RPG, so you can't even say that erasing that from Paper Mario from history would necessarily erase subsequent Mario RPGs like Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga or Bowser's Inside Story, or because there already was a Super Mario RPG. So
it would erase a very specific one of that franchise, though.
Yeah. So for me, just the decision that I've played Paper Mario games. I like them. I'm not happy to see them go or anything. I've only played Earthbound. I've not played Earthbound Beginnings as it was released on Virtual Console. I didn't get to play much of Mother 3. We did the retroactive of that, but just the fact that it is a separate franchise with its own music and characters and everything that's just totally its own, that I would want to preserve that.
Yeah, I'm not an Earthbound super fan, but I've enjoyed what I've played, and Paper Mario, I mean, I kind of think that it's the weaker of all the Mario RPG, franchises. I find that most of the entries in that series are just way too long. They kind of tend to drag on, and I'm very much over the whole idea of timing-based, attacks. So less of that would mean maybe I would get tired of Mario and Luigi less fast than I did. I don't know. So I mostly see benefits. Like erasing Paper Mario might make a bunch of N64 owners really sad back in the late 90s, but other than that, I don't know.
I know one is like.
I know it's beloved. I did not really care that much for it.
I mean, I just think for me, erasing Earthbound, it's the way to inflict the most pain on the most people.
That's
this is the
that's a very Earthboundian response, John. John is the Starman, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Earthbound fans are typically rabid and kind of whiny, and they just never stop pining for Earthbound games.
This is also true.
And
they don't like it when you say I don't like Earthbound.
Let's just ratchet that up.
They really don't like it.
Let's just ratchet that up. And I don't really, I don't really have any particular hate towards either game, either series. I just want to see the most pain, generally.
All right, so John's nihilism from the first act has transformed into sadism, which I'm okay with, actually. Like that's a transformation that I think makes a lot of sense for you, John.
It's a process, James. It's a process.
I think I like where your character arc is going.
I'm just trying to live my best life over here, all right?
You're just cranking on episode titles today, John. So thank you for that. So I think the answer from my standpoint is pretty obvious. Like I legitimately don't enjoy the Earthbound games. I don't like playing them. I understand what they're going for. I get the deconstruction of the JRPG mechanics, but I just think they don't play very well as a consequence of that. And I got pretty deep into all the ones I've played. I would never, ever touch Earthbound Beginnings because even fans of that series have to are clearly the Shelbyville with the lemon tree. Would no, it's still good, honest. And you're like, no, it's not good. You know it's not good. Just admit it. Admit it's a bad game. They're like, no, it's great. Delicious lemons.
Shake Carter, boy.
Yeah. So if you kill Earthbound from all existence, what do you lose? Ape became Creatures, who obviously owns a third of the Pokemon franchise, and they were involved, but they weren't really one of the ones who originated the whole idea. So near as I can figure, besides losing the other Earthbound games, all you lose is stuff that's immediately super duper super inspired. Like a certain game that will come to Switch eventually. Undertale, for those of you who don't follow that reference.
You lose Ness in Smash Brothers, it was especially the original Smash Brothers. He was really powerful. I found
because he was the hardest unlock to get.
Yeah, he was one of the secret characters, yeah. And then we'd also lose Johnny's story about beating kids at Melee with Ness.
All right, so that's actually the biggest loss so far.
Yeah, I mean,
that is kind of a loss.
Well, we
it's
get
a
to
national
actually
treasure.
see...
It's an international treasure of a story.
We get to see
Yeah.
the real Johnny Metz in that story. But near as I can figure, the only other thing you lose is Itoi Shigesato no Bass Suri No. 1. which is a bass fishing game that he made for the Satellaview on the N64. So the losses here don't exactly pile up if you erase that franchise from history. And because I don't think it's a good game and Paper Mario is a good game, I think this choice is pretty easy to make. Paper Mario is a superior RPG and therefore it is a superior survivor. So it continues on. Next game. John, would you read the next two again?
The next two are Star Fox or F-Zero.
I think Nintendo's done both of these.
Yeah.
It was Star Fox quite recently. But the F-Zero, you go back to 2005.
That Star Fox got pushed out. It was okay, let's just get it out here.
And then there was Star Fox 64 3D. I mean, the point is, there's been surprising amount of Star Fox stuff actually released onto shelves, like
Star
since
Fox
the same
products.
is true.
Haven't the GBA like F-Zero games made it on the Wii U Virtual Console?
Yeah,
Or at the very least, the
that
SNES
is
one.
why I said
Did the
shelves.
weird anime ones make it, or just the original?
The one made it. Yeah, there was one that was exclusive to Japan. That obviously did not. They didn't localize that.
Right, but there were 3 on GBA, weren't there? There was
but one of those was exclusive to Japan. So we have the other 2 on GBA VC.
Yeah, there was a regular F-Zero, and then there were two weird ones inspired by a show.
Fun fact, I bought the one inspired by a show, and I mailed my Nintendo code, or probably Club Nintendo was still a thing, and I got a children's watch out of it that didn't fit me. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet.
It's Nintendo reminding you this game is for children.
Yes.
You full-grown adult. What is wrong with you?
Grown-ass man.
All right,
Don't
so
know.
let's do some killing. I went last time, so I'll go first. I think F-Zero at this point is the less sharp pill to swallow.
Because it's kind of already been erased from the last 13 years of history anyway.
It's a box of stale Crustios without the bladed O in it.
Deep cuts, no pun intended.
I'm not happy about either of them.
No, I think it's a natural pairing that good Taskmaster Chariot Goblin has got. The two kind of Nintendo trying to kind of approximate arcade thrills on Super Nintendo, and then where those went from there. So it's difficult to kind of differentiate them on that basis. But I guess I'd have to go with F-Zero just because it kind of seems dead anyway. So what am I really doing?
I would have one more GameCube controller in my collection if it weren't for F-Zero GX. So I think that actually helps me make the decision.
I would kill off Star Fox, I suppose, because I probably put more time into F-Zero GX than all of the Star Fox franchise together. So it's just a game that I enjoyed more, that spoke to me more.
You raise a good point, though. I only like one Star Fox game.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's
it's Dinosaur Planet. No, I'm just kidding. It's
oh god. Ooh, yeah,
trash.
definitely killing Star Fox. Thank you. Yeah, you just reminded me of a very good reason.
I mean, he's not saying he doesn't like the game, but he's much cooler about killing it now that he remembered that is technically a Star Fox game.
I only wasted a rental on Star Fox Adventures, and I still feel
still the desire to kill emerges.
Absolutely.
Where are we going?
I mean, it's true. I must have sunk more time into F-Zero. I think, other than the death, the fact that it's kind of undead or whatever, as it is, whereas Star Fox is somewhat more alive. Although they do have trouble kind of moving beyond Star Fox 64. That's kind of something they always kind of seem to struggle to really kind of surpass, but. And apparently it's a similar thing with the thought of trying to surpass GX is a problem for Nintendo with F-Zero. But I do kind of feel even though futuristic races have kind of fallen out of fashion in general, there's more substitutes for the kind of gameplay that F-Zero gives you than there is for what Star Fox gives you.
But would there be if you erased it from history?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
I think Wipeout would still exist without...
Wipeout feels pretty different.
Yeah, but I mean, that's probably one of the futuristic racing games that we're counting amongst the kind of the replacements.
I'm trying to remember what the one that Shinen puts out.
Fast.
That definitely would not exist.
Can't forget Tube Slider as well,
that's
James.
pretty on the
Tube Slider would not exist, which is the biggest loss here.
Well, yeah, you're changing
I'm pretty sure my Tube
there.
Slider copy is actually bootleg. Recently, I was looking at it. I think I saw somebody bootleg Tube Slider.
Wow. Nice.
Or maybe NEC just didn't give that much fucks, and that's how much effort they put into making it. I don't know.
Yep. Now, for me, it's just kind of a tough one. I'm not a huge fan of Star Fox. I like the F-Zero games a lot. But I'm killing off F-Zero, and I'll tell you why. because Star Fox lives, we have the meme with Fox. Final destination. No items. Fox.
You know what? John's just giving me
us-
like some pause.
It allows us to make fun of tournament players in Smash Brothers.
Yeah, but what if
I
Fox
love
was
that.
just never there to introduce this wave dashing shit?
No, I like the fact that he exists more, and we have that meme. That's totally worth it. That's
I was so
totally
sure
worth
he
it.
was going to go on about like the dialogue from Star Fox 64, but no, when you said the word meme, that's where I thought we were going with. But
No, let's do a barrel roll. No, John goes to a darker place.
Yep.
Deeper
Smashboards.com, the darkest place.
Sometimes I just, I feel like every couple of years we just got to stir up that dark part of the internet that are the Smash Brothers
Every
tournament
couple
players.
episodes.
We got to get a couple
Every couple
body shots in there,
years.
like Greg says. Just a couple body
But
shots in there.
I guess the question is that if Fox never existed, what other Nintendo character would be that character in Smash Brothers?
True. But it's just,
I'm not a huge comic books reader, but isn't there something about like the DC universe and like Superboy kind of like punching reality and having himself like come back to reality like that? Like I feel like if we cut off
Probably
F-Zero,
DC comics are stupid.
right? I think that F-Zero, like Captain Falcon, is the most likely to come back if we try to erase his series from existence. Like in the anime, like I think basically
God,
like
that would be a shit to lose.
right,
Falcon
yeah.
Punch. That's
Which has nothing to do with the franchise at all.
I know, but that's just
It's
it's all the
amazing.
more. It's all the more exquisite for it. So
Right,
yeah,
like
this is tough.
doesn't that show end with him like punching a supernova or something? Like I don't know. There's something crazy.
That's what I do.
no one
Yeah.
gets out of this one unscathed. That's for sure.
Absolutely
all right,
not.
Let's
All right,
next
next one.
duo.
Next one is Box Boy or Pushmo.
See, I've only played one of these.
Yeah,
See,
I
I played them
Pushmo.
both,
I
but
haven't played Box Boy.
Pushmo all day, every day.
Yeah, I'm going all Pushmo. All Pushmo.
Yeah.
Box Boy can die a fiery death.
Well, no, I was going the other way. Box Boy is sticking around. I mean, when I talked about Pushmo, I thought it was just boring. It was so easy.
No,
but
I like Pushmo.
Box Boy, I enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean I played the first one, and I know where you're coming from with that, especially like kind of gets more complicated, but it generally involves like just doing more stuff. Like it
Right.
just takes longer, but it's not that much like higher order. But I think Crashmo or
Yes.
whatever or Full Blocks or whatever, that apparently I've not played it, but kind of did take it places, that were more complex. So, I hesitate to get rid of that just on that basis because you would be getting rid of all of the Pushmo games, and they apparently kind of address that to some extent.
But here's the thing: if you get rid of Box Boy, you get rid of the QB amiibo, which is possibly the most useless amiibo that has ever existed, and that's a high bar. It's.
I think I just prefer Crashmo over the first Box Boy, which is the only one I've played. But really, do we have to kill off one of the few Nintendo published...
The rules are the rules.
Yeah, but it's one of the few Nintendo published online games, downloadable games that Nintendo is putting out these days. I feel there's kind of a dearth of that, and...
they're smaller games that, kind of cheaper... maybe a bit more experimental kind of thing. Like you'd like to see them do more of that in general, not less. But
but it seems like they've moved away from it.
To our head by Chariot Goblin here. So
our audience demands blood,
are you not entertained?
and so we shall give them
By
blood.
Ness's
Probably
brain
not.
splattering all over the crowd.
I think Pushmo deserves to die, if only because nobody can figure out what to call that title consistently across the world.
Yeah, that's like the last breath of the whole
But it's the worst one of them all.
It's not the worst one of them all, James, because that includes Pentatentacles, and you know that. I know you know
I like
that.
Pentatentacles though.
No, you don't.
It's so fucking stupid.
Rotozoa is a perfectly good name.
Pentatentacles is a perfectly good name
It's
as well.
not. It's rubbish. Just call it Pentacles, but it didn't have the balls because it'd be satanic and shit.
Pentacles would have been even better.
But no, it's the whole
Fall
so you
Blocks
get
is such a bad name.
Yeah, you push mode, crash mode, but yeah, then you go. What was it? Pull blocks and fall blocks. Yeah, that in
Those
Europe.
are so bad. It's Boom. Is it a Boom Blocks sequel? Is Steven
Yeah,
Spielberg
well, they
make
haven't
this
got
game?
to. They haven't got to Fall Blocks Bash Party yet. So.
It's Bash Party is Steven Spielberg full box production.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
If our audience demands blood, I think that Pushmo is definitely more fleshy.
It's true.
True. Yeah.
Better splatter. All right.
Yep.
Point.
All right.
The last two are Pikmin or Splatoon.
Ooh.
No, it's very different. Unlike the Star Fox F-Zero, I think these are like much harder to compare.
Yeah, so we'll lose the 3 Pikmin games that have come out, and the 4th one that's basically done.
Yeah, that's true.
We played it. That one came out last year, right?
Yeah.
No, it didn't. Fucking hell. Or we'll lose 2 Splatoon games, and I would argue there's a pretty good chance we would lose ARMS as well.
Yeah, that's a fair, and again, it's sort of similar point to what Guillaume was saying in the last case. You know, kind of like you said, I think you feel like what Splatoon represents in terms of the direction that Nintendo's going in terms of, you know, the younger people at the company, new IP. Like you wouldn't want to kind of erase that success.
Also, a whole lot of fucking money.
Because you kind of feel like it is paying off for them. You know, I mean, ARMS. I like ARMS. I played it rather a lot. You know, and it was modestly sort of successful, I guess. But it's, you know, I could see it having, you know, broader kind of consequences for their development philosophies or priorities than just that.
I look at this one and say, okay, the people who made Splatoon are going to be around for at least another 10, 15 years. The people who made Pikmin didn't need Pikmin to make their career. Like, this is Miyamoto's game. It's fine. He's gonna be okay. But Splatoon, we would never know what games might not have been greenlit by this crew or by the people who worked on this game if this game didn't exist. Because I would imagine they're gonna get at least some latitude going forward in what they want to make. But also, Splatoon gave Nintendo something that was cool, which in the Wii U, they didn't have any of at all, period. Like, the Wii U was completely lacking in cool. Think of the first game they positioned for the Wii U. It was Nintendo Land, which is about the farthest from cool thing you can possibly make.
Tropical Freeze didn't even have funky in it.
It didn't? It wasn't funky at all.
It was way behind on the cool curves.
Like,
no funky mode.
There is something to be said about your brand having something cool attached to it. And, like, Splatoon is fucking cool for however you feel about that game. It's got a thing going on that has been successful for them beyond just the fact the game sells an unbelievable number of copies in Japan. Unfathomable number.
Well, selfishly, I would kill off Splatoon because I really like Pikmin 3. But also, I kind of wonder if I quite enjoy Splatoon and I enjoy playing it with the motion controls because they seem to work really well. They work well to make small adjustments to the height that you're shooting at. Yeah. And I kind of wonder, does Splatoon have as good an aiming control scheme if the Pikmin 3 demo is not at E3 and, you know, doesn't show Nintendo that their whole motion aiming fucking doesn't work with the Wii gamepad, Wii U gamepad, you know? It's
Ripples kind of still pond.
It's one of those questions that I feel like maybe
I'll take that risk.
Yeah, we'll never get an answer for, but I just remember when Pikmin 3 was at E3, everyone was just struggling to just do anything with that reticle with the motion controls, and all the Nintendo, like, was it like like on the second day of E3 they kind of disabled the motion controls? They were like, yeah, you can't play with those. They realized like, terrible. Oh, we've made a huge mistake. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. Like maybe it was a lesson that Nintendo needed to learn, and so it would be a big loss if that hadn't happened.
I am killing off Pikmin easily.
Yeah, out of the two, I've got more immediate affection for Pikmin, but I think the broader arguments that James has made, I'd have to reluctantly kill it and preserve Splatoon.
I'm killing
you're dead
it.
to me.
I'm killing it with...
Think of how many years of like Pikmin is coming we're missing out on, though.
I know.
Yeah.
How many times we get to hear about Pikmin 3 and or Pikmin 4 with just nothing but a dream? What if Pikmin 4 being basically done was just like a mistranslation? And he meant to say we basically haven't started.
Or it was basically canceled.
And then he's just like, well, I have to stick to it now. He's just living a lie about Pikmin 4. Pikmin 4 coming to Wii U in 2018.
Without Pikmin, we don't have Reggie kidding about being a purple Pikmin. So yeah, let's kill out Pikmin.
I'm about to say I can live with that. I'm not calling the episode Reggie's Purple Pikmin, though. We're not doing that. All right, let's go on to the next email. This is kind of a long one. Greg, would you care to read?
Absolutely. Seren writes, hello RFN crew and James. Nintendo's new president, Furukawa-san, seems optimistic in some ways and insane in others. Particularly troubling is his decision to strip many people in the company of their ability to greenlight new titles for development, instead establishing a board of 5 people, including himself, who can serve that function. One look at the company's prominent producers tells me that the board is most likely Furukawa-san, Miyamoto-san, Koizumi-san, Sakamoto-san, and either Nagoshi-san or Yabuki-san. Probably Nagoshi-san. However, that's not my question. My question is with regards to his mobile provision. Hold it! Furukawa-san said to the Business Daily Nikkei that he wants to grow Nintendo's smartphone gaming sector to be worth 100 billion yen in annual revenue, roughly 911 million US dollars, with one single blockbuster mobile game. Now that Nintendo is joining every company from 2010 and trying to release a single extraordinarily profitable app, what app do you think, in all seriousness, John, Nintendo should try to make? Keep in mind that unlike other app developers, they have access to their entire treasure trove of IP. Also, unlike other app developers, Nintendo has no fucking clue what the internet is. How will they monetize it? Remember that Europe is cracking down on loot boxes, declaring some illegal, particularly Belgium and the Netherlands, and that Apple requires drop rates be listed for all gacha-style apps. Disrespectfully yours.
So they do already list it for all their apps. So listing them is fine. And it's true that the Netherlands specifically has started to move against loot boxes, but I'm not worried about... I mean, granted, I don't much care for the concept, but EU regulations are one thing. These games make fucking bank in Japan and South Korea and China, where you could probably get away with a little bit more. But yeah, the idea that they want to get to, what was it, 1 trillion yen? Was that the number?
Yeah, it's some astronomical number.
100 billion yen in annual revenue.
1 trillion yen was their consolidated sales of the last year. So that's not a huge portion of their portfolio. They made 40 billion yen last year, or for fiscal 2017. So that is a lot of fucking growth. The question would be, what, like, in terms of just pure revenue, what is the most money a game out there makes in the mobile space? Let's go to Google.
Yeah, I mean, it would be like whatever, Candy Crush Saga or something like that, or all those terrible games.
So this is the problem with these, of course, is that they're always going to be dated. But looking at this is a recent article. Hey, that's good. It's actually kind of shocking, some of the things that are on here, but Clash of Clans is up there pretty high. Candy Crush Saga, as John mentioned, is one of them. Makes nearly $1 million a day. So that's about $365 million a year.
Yeah, but and remember, the target that Seren referenced is 911 million US annually.
So
what would be they've talked about, not really looking at increasing the number of titles to reach this, kind of plateau. They've said that they're still probably looking at most, a couple or three every year that would be coming out. So it doesn't necessarily have to be one, I guess, but yeah, you are looking at each individual game being way more profitable than the ones that have come out have been.
Yeah, you're talking about a game that comes out and actually just destroys all the records there are. And so what I get out of this, honestly, to give an honest read out of it, is I get somebody coming in who's saying things in part just to get a little bit of attention. And not necessarily on himself. This could very well just be like Nintendo had a very successful fiscal year. They're also going through a major transition, and they're bringing on a new CEO. They're shaking up they pretty hugely changed up their board. And so he's saying some things that we're going to call them wildly optimistic. It's important.
Yeah, I think also kind of, what they think the investors want to hear,
right.
And they probably do want to hear it.
There's one important thing to note, which is he said this in an interview. He did not say anything even remotely close to this in their investors briefing, because you have to actually fucking believe the shit you're saying in those. Whereas in an interview, you can say whatever the fuck you want. So,
I mean, it also puts pressure on the dev teams too. Kind of like it's kind of a roundabout way of saying, "Hey guys, we need to step it up."
Yeah, we've not been that successful.
Exactly. So people within the company hear that, obviously, and they're like, "Hey, did you hear what the CEO said?" Jesus.
It's more messaging than it is actual intent.
Yes.
It's a statement of, I want to grow this portion of the, and keep in mind, based on last year's fiscal numbers, if they tacked on 100 billion, or excuse me, 1 trillion yen, or excuse me, 100 billion yen, it would only be 10% of their intake from last year. So, like, it's not a huge portion of what they are as a company. But they need to, he obviously is taking this a step further than Iwata. He's like, oh, this is just kind of like a side branding thing to get people's attention. He's obviously saying, no, this is a pure ass revenue stream. And I think part of, and Johnny made a reference to this in the episode last week when we talked about, I can't remember what the name of the game is. The one they announced during the investors briefing.
Yeah, the new joint venture.
Yeah, the not published by Nintendo, not developed by Nintendo, not on a Nintendo system, not featuring Nintendo characters, Nintendo game. Like it's a statement of like, this is a space we are going to make money in because we know how to make video games. We may use this also to promote our brand, which they've been relatively successful with, but this is a statement now that this is also about making fucking money.
Yeah, and to some extent that might be easier if you're unencumbered, because when you're trying to kind of deal with the existing IP that they have so far, maybe you kind of worried about, perceptions of what that said, about the main series games, in terms of, maybe that's why they went with the pricing model they did on Super Mario Run,
right?
And certain things like that, or you kind of worried about how it like will color people's perceptions of your console or your Switch games if the mobile games a certain way. You don't have to worry about any of that,
right? Dragalia Lost has no reputation to destroy.
Yeah, so you just like blank slate, like what works for mobile, and you don't have to worry about from a mechanical point of view either. In terms of like, okay, let's Fire Emblem, has done the best for them, and but there was a kind of significant like adaptation that had to happen there from the the regular kind of Fire Emblem mechanics and design to mobile, which I get, like I said, it's done up pretty well for them. So you won't say they were successful in that, but if you start from scratch, it's just all tailored to the mobile space. So I think you're right. It's kind of and they've said as much if you've read the Q&A stuff that the mobile branch of the company, continue to serve the function of broadening the reach of their IP, but yeah, it also seems like it's just more like this is a revenue stream, and we're going to do more to just maximize it.
So if there's a game that they could make using their own IP, nothing will get them to that number on its own. There's no game that will make that kind of money. Just realistically speaking, unless they can somehow make Fortnite go back. And
I mean, you kind of, if they're not going to have like a whole bunch of games coming out, it's only going to be a couple or whatever every year. You're also going to need them, and they've talked about this. They acknowledge this again in the Q&A stuff that's out there from the investors kind of briefing. That you're going to have games with staying power to get to that figure. That you're right, it's only a couple a year or whatever, but they stack. They're going to keep contributing significant revenue, and then that once those kind of accumulate over the years, then you get to that kind of figure that Seren quoted.
Yeah, so I think the idea. I mean, I get the idea of maybe one big game sort of like pushes them into that space in a much more full way, because right now they're still outsiders in that space. Like they're not. Nintendo makes a game, it's a big deal because it's Nintendo, but they're not considered, major players in the mobile space, and maybe making the big game that makes them a ton of money isn't going to get them to that number on its own, but maybe gets them treated more seriously.
It's kind of like, if a band is like trying to break America or whatever, kind of thing. Like they're big elsewhere, but until you actually get big in America, then, like you're not going to kind of sell the kind of numbers that you think you can. And if they can break the mobile market and actually get something in that top grossing kind of list that we talk about, then it'd be easier for the subsequent ones to do the same, and to get to that level that they're targeting.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm kind of moving in different direction.
Okay.
I want to discuss the first bit eventually.
Right.
Well, we do have to name a franchise
the green light bit.
So before that, like, James, like you keep saying game, but Seren specifically asked for an app. And also she mentions that Nintendo doesn't have a clue what the internet is and how will they monetize it.
No, do not say the smartphone app.
No, but, okay, so what, instead of an Uber,
Instead of Uber?
messed up that delivery.
Are we going to make a Mario Kart
Holy
Uber?
Shit. Instead of a game, why not an app, kind of like Uber, where Nintendo doesn't know what online is? Well, maybe we can just hire people with our smartphones to come and grab, the second controller and play our multiplayer games with us locally. And it's just, they just come over and they start playing with you whatever it is that Nintendo puts out. Does it send
you fake text messages when they're busy? So it's like you have a social life where they're like, "Hey, I can't come over today."
There's a few things that Nintendo does need to learn about, such as how a 5-star rating system works. It seems like they're having trouble with that with their kind of review a game thing on the eShop. It's going to be important if you want quality, players. If you want to be able to rate your player
if you
too.
Want quality players, not quality games. Guillaume only wants quality players in the eShop.
Yeah, because you don't want to be stuck with someone who doesn't know how to throw a fireball in Street Fighter 2.
Wouldn't that actually be beneficial for you?
It
depends
might
when you want
be,
actual competition. He's just about padding your ego.
Guillaume's already made it clear he's just about padding his numbers. He made that clear in the first segment.
You got me.
So
of course, the big problem. I know, James. I know what you're about to say. I know what you're about to say. Uber is not actually profitable.
It's not. No, it's because they make electric cars too. Can we get into that business?
That is the kind of the genius of it. Nintendo can just use this app to they can maybe seduce a few celebrities Ashton Kutcher, who's going to convince Silicon Valley people to invest in this Uber-like service, and they just take their money.
Are you selling me a pyramid scheme? Is that what we're doing right now? Guillaume, are you
Ponzi
selling
Brothers,
us?
It's called venture capital.
Yes, the Super Ponzi Brothers.
It's called venture capital these days, James. Learn about it.
Oh my god.
See, I was thinking a dating app called Does Mario Fuck?
No! God damn it!
We said we weren't going to say that word anymore.
I know, it's a
John.
proper title, though.
Yeah,
it's a proper
still.
title. I'm not
It's-
using
I mean,
it
it's
as
a
a
fair
curse
point.
Nothing
word.
proper about it, John.
It's a
It's like
proper
in
title.
those-
It's
It's the height of
capitalized and
improper.
everything. I did not say it as a curse word.
Hell, John, I will fuck you.
In those PG-13 movies where you're only allowed one, it does land much harder than it does in, like, Goodfellas.
That's
right. True.
So, I mean, there's an argument for the restraint in that regard.
I'm all about restraint. You know this.
Oh, come on. All right, y'all are assholes. I'm going to try to answer this for real and not turn this into the worst segment in the world, which is hard because we pretty much do that all the time. If I was going to say the problem is they don't own Pokemon. If they owned or if they owned more than 50% of Pokemon, they owned 50% plus one of Pokemon, done. Problem solved. You just get on right through there. You just steamroll the Pokemon company and you start releasing Pokemon mobile games. But they don't. They can't do that. So the answer is, what do they have that comes close? And my answer would have originally been Animal Crossing, but they fucked that right up.
Yeah, and they've evolved on this, right, with Animal Crossing. I get this is very far from my expertise, mobile gaming and all that kind of stuff, but they changed Animal Crossing in terms of you can end up spending money on gacha type stuff. Is that right?
Yep, so they give a bunch of premium currency, but the reality of the situation was they gave so much that people really had no reason to spend real money because they could buy everything they wanted. But what if they could also use that premium currency to buy things they don't know they want? Things they don't know if they don't know if they want them. And what if they couldn't know until after they spent the money if they wanted it? Well, that gives you infinite opportunity to spend money. And then eventually you'll spend all that fucking premium currency they gave you to start with. It's really just, it's a place to put the currency they give you so you have to buy more because they gave so much. So the games that are popular in the mobile space are really simple puzzle games. I mean, but they're like presentation pushed way up. Like Candy Crush Saga is as basic ass game as it gets. It's a match puzzle game. Doesn't get any more basic than that. Clash of Clans is largely a strategy game of some description. But a lot of these games are pretty simple, and you could certainly make money making a good one of them. And so it's just a matter of what franchise do you want to put on there. And the answer is probably it's not going to be super straightforward, but like an Animal Crossing puzzle game would probably do pretty well. You could certainly do something with Zelda that would make some money, especially if it's like small dungeons and it's constantly pushing out dungeons. Like really basic stuff. Like imagine the dungeons from Phantom Hourglass, not the dungeon you go to all the time. But just like one of the more normal dungeons, but a lot shorter. Like maybe the length of a shrine in Breath of the Wild. Like pretty short. And they just push out those, and you can buy retries, or you can maybe if you fail, you have to wait a certain amount of time. It's cooldown timers. Or you can buy access to more of those dungeons. Like maybe you can only get 3, but if you buy this, you can get 6. Whatever. Something to kind of let people get in there. It's got to be something that you can play for a short period of time, but you can play it a lot. Because that's the thing. A puzzle game, you can essentially play it forever. It's just random. These dungeons, especially if they can find ways to generate them automatically but still be clever, you could just pump them out, let people play them, and they'll be out there. Is it going to be huge broad appeal? No, but it could be reasonably successful. I think the goal really, if they're going to use their own franchises, the sky probably is limited at reasonable success. Because their franchises are sort of, endemic to their stuff. I think Regalia Lost is probably not going to be a big giant hit, but the idea of starting from absolute scratch with nothing vested in it and being able to just go in there and say we can do whatever we want with this franchise is probably the way to go for their big giant hit. And the perk of that is they can then parlay that thing into whatever they want. They could use their existing infrastructure to promote that game if they think this is a winner. They can leverage that in their branding. I mean, I'll give you a great example. Disney put out a game in like 2013 called, I think it was called Where's My Water? It's just a dumb water pipes game. It make the water come through the pipe by moving stuff around. It was reasonably successful, and then they flipped the character that it starred into a branding thing and sold merch with it on there. There is a pipeline where they can make this money off of a mobile space thing that's not just getting money from the app, but also leveraging whatever you create to make more money, going back into their leveraging IPs strategy. And if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to give them the Angry Birds movie angle and say, like, well, that's still money from Angry Birds, then maybe they actually can hit that number eventually. But I'm being really charitable in my accounting here, which is something that only Arthur Anderson gets away with.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because Nintendo's often quite conservative with its targeting. You know,
Yeah.
quite realistic relative to other companies anyway. But then sometimes they're sort of bullish. I mean, I thought Kimishima was very bullish when he was saying Switch could do as well as Wii. You know, when he first said that seemed pretty strong language for Nintendo. But at the same time, you know, it's on a somewhat similar trajectory to this point. So, you know, it wasn't necessarily all that outlandish either. But yeah, I could see them being, in truth, satisfied with, you know, sort of fairly successful with these things if, you know, they do achieve the other objectives of broadening the reach of their brands and all that kind of thing. But certainly, you know, more successful than it is, you know, more profitable than it is currently, but not necessarily as big as that, you know, as the 911 million annual figure. But, you know, the other part of it, I guess, is perhaps a kind of, you know, sort of bullets in the chamber kind of feel. You know, if they keep sort of going at this, that at some point, yeah, they are going to kind of, and having respectable successes with that make that arm of the business, you know, sustainable. At some point, they might get that mega hit, even if they don't particularly know which one it's going to be, or something, you know, just catches fire somewhat, you know, surprisingly. I mean, for me, I think Mario is always going to have the biggest reach, so that's the most likely to get the job done. Be interested to see what happens with Mario Kart, because that's next up.
That's true. I forgot about the Mario Kart game.
Yeah, that will be good. I don't know, again, because I'm not a mobile gaming person at all. I don't know how much the lust for racing that there is in Britain translates to the mobile scene or whatever.
There's a bunch of mobile racing games. I don't know that any of them are good.
Yeah, how good or profitable they are, I don't know. But that will certainly be interesting. But you kind of feel like at some point, if they hit on the... You said it could be something that's very like tangentially related to like core Mario, unlike Mario Run, which, you know... They went with that pricing model. Maybe they're not willing to do anything like other than that with something that's a bit too close to core Mario type of experience, even though it was obviously heavily kind of simplified and adapted. But it could be something that's more just like Mario branding, that's a simple game, but you know, that could, I think, ultimately kind of be like their biggest kind of money spinner in the mobile space, given, like you said, that Pokemon's kind of off in its own, you know, its own little world with the Pokemon Company and all that. And in terms of monetizing, I guess they do show some reluctance relative to other players in this sphere. You know, like I imagine most people would have just started with where they got to on Animal Crossing.
Absolutely.
And the Super Mario Run pricing and all that kind of thing. So how they would, in some ways you could argue that the kind of pushback that's coming against loot boxes and all that might not affect them too much because they're reluctant to go all in to that kind of area anyway. But it's still a good, you know, a damn good question in terms of, well, okay, fair enough, but how are you actually going to get people to spend money if you're not quite ruthless, you know, enough to kind of, you know, incentivize it the right way? Because certainly, you know, it's been a pretty common theme, hasn't it? Mitomo and now what's happened with some of the other ones. They're not, don't seem like they got the courage to really bite into it sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, Mitomo, you bought candy so you could play that awful minigame and then maybe get more candy or maybe get like a piece of clothing. It just wasn't interesting. Like there was no reason to do it. I think ultimately you have to monetize gameplay and not random rewards. And so if you can make it give people something that they're willing to pay to play, which is sort of what I would want any kind of economics of games to actually be. Pay to actually enjoy the game you're playing, not pay to get a chance to draw for something. I think that's probably fine. The question is, how do you make a game that people are willing to pay to play it in short multiple times over again? That whole free to start shit that they pulled. Like, how do you make a game that people want to pay you to keep playing it versus I'm going to pay for it one time? Because if you do it one time, that's all the money you're ever going to get out of them. And apparently that wasn't okay for Mario.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was kind of a test ground as much of anything in terms of how much does that model, what kind of results does that model yield in that mobile ecosystem, and they have their answer. It's even with a very powerful character, behind it, it didn't set the world on fire. So, it suggests that they're going to have to reach further into this territory that they're not all that comfortable in, which is bound to make the achievement of this target harder. But we'll see.
I think ultimately the entire mobile space needs to reckon with the loot box stuff at some point. But I don't know that we're there yet. Because it's the pushback has started, but I think we're still a long ways off.
And like you said, it's kind of regionalized, to some extent as well.
Yeah, I mean, in China, they're very, very strict about you have to post the odds for everything, but Nintendo already does that. And they can just keep doing what they're already doing, and they'll be in compliance. So we want to talk a little bit about the idea of them changing who can greenlight games over at Nintendo.
Yeah, it was Seren. It was not listed as a question, more of a sort of observation. But I still think it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, I don't entirely know how to interpret that statement because I don't feel like Nintendo is the kind of company where just anybody could have greenlit a game. I mean.
No, it's I mean, of course, last week you were talking about the stories about Yamauchi back in the day,
right?
About the fact that he was like the sole decision maker, but he wouldn't play the game; someone had to play them for him, or whatever.
He is the decider.
Who knows how sort of apocryphal some of this was, but clearly, I'm sure Nintendo over the years has kind of got a lot broader in the kind of input that it seeks and all that kind of thing for greenlighting games. But yeah, what Furukawa's talked about is kind of interesting in that in the general sense, the leadership of the company, they're kind of touting it was something about next generation leadership. That it's kind of actually he will be kind of devolving power to this committee, this board of people who are going to be made up, kind of as Seren, kind of guessed at some of the people that would be on it, but of development people, of creative game design people.
So,
but he is ultimately the chief executive.
So I have the Nikkei article in front of me, and it's a little bit different than how I'm reading it. So let me get to the exact here's the quote. So Kimishima notes that Furukawa knows how to draw potential from development teams, and over the past years he's created a business foundation for the next generation. Furukawa will set up a decision-making panel of 5 directors, including himself. Quote, other people are gifted at evaluating products. Making the final call on whether or not that something makes sense is my responsibility. So, I mean, that sounds like a CEO's job. Like, the CEO's job is to say, okay, I have picked the experts in this area to tell me if this is, to evaluate the idea. This is, what we're going to, but ultimately, if it fails, it's on my head.
Yeah, I guess the question is, are you, because the kind of, I think what Saren's talking about, there was a quote somewhere around there where he talks about the fact that in the past, but there may have been too many people who had input into the decision making. So it's not saying that too many people were making decisions. It's that perhaps there wasn't a narrowing down of who actually gets to kind of present the options, as it were, to the decision making people.
So, like, how I read it, and again, this is one of those things where, without having that transparency that Nintendo famously does not have, it sounded more like it goes through too many steps to get, because it goes through too many people. Not that it goes through too many green lights, because only a handful of people at a company can green light a $50 million project.
Yeah, I agree.
Like a director level can't green light that. You're a VP or above.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a point where, like, I've worked in a couple companies, and one of the things that we've always run into when we get big projects is that it goes through 12 steps, like 5 different boards, 3 different advisory panels, 85 different opinions come in, there's 1,000 emails, and then ultimately it goes before the board, who goes into a room and votes. And, like, we don't get to talk to them. We don't know why they voted the way they did. We don't know why the cut line was placed where it was. And a lot of times you look at it and you go, like, that cut line, why this project fell above the line and that one fell below, doesn't make any sense, because that one is necessary to do this one. It sounds more like they're streamlining that part of the process, the everything up into a decision being made. And that they're bringing in more people from the game's part to make that decision. We're going to make this game.
Also just kind of defining who those people are. I mean, there's always that kind of thing about, if it's everyone's job, it's no one's job.
Right.
You can kind of, I mean, if you explicitly define the people who, are going to actually kind of feed into that decision-making process, then it's just, maybe it makes everything, clearer and cleaner and that it's just going to function more smoothly. I mean, I think, it depends how you will look at it. If you are reading, so the kind of negative connotations that I could take from this, I think you could look at it a number of different ways, but if I was looking to interpret it in a kind of bad way,
as we do in the show,
yeah, well, I must admit, being sort of pessimistically inclined, that is often my natural instinct before I try to balance it out, with the rest of me. You could say, well, this might be sort of a bit of a throttling of, kind of the kinds of ideas that come up for consideration. If we lock it down to this panel of more senior kind of design people and Furukawa himself, that you don't get as the same sort of breadth of things coming up for the high level consideration, that only kind of more in the box type stuff really gets a chance, and that that might stifle creativity or something. I mean, you might argue, what's the impetus behind this? And you wonder things like Federation Force, or perhaps Ever Oasis, or codename Steam. Is it that they've looked at the flops? I've played 2 of those and quite like them. And certainly Ever Oasis seems like a pretty good game from the outside, and we've had some nice things said about it here. But are they looking at the commercial performance and saying, that was a failure of people greenlighting that in the first place? I mean, is that why this needs to change, or is it just this is the new kind of management structure that they want in general, and it kind of feeds into all aspects of the decision making structure?
Yeah, I mean, I think the failures are part of it, obviously. I think also probably successes are part of it. Maybe they feel like some games take too long to get made because they have to go through 5 layers of bureaucry to get to the deciding board.
Yeah, I mean, certainly this is a reaction to
Nintendo
something,
is,
for sure.
so famous for prototyping. I mean, maybe that is more of a significant concern, that in fact, development resources may be be sort of taken up for too long in those phases before we get a definite answer of like, yes, this is worth pursuing.
Right, because you can prototype yourself to death, but maybe it's just a matter of, hey, we want to have one group that has oversight of all of this, just so we know what everybody's doing. It's entirely possible that they have games that are like, they'll have a situation where there are multiple games being worked on that don't complement each other. They're too close. They have to end up like pushing one out. I mean, we saw that during the Wii era, where there's like, hey, there's 4 2D platformers coming out this year. It's like, well, wait, how did that happen? Well, the answer is because, well, some of them are being made over at Goodfeel, some are being made over at HAL, some are being made in Retro, and some are being made in Kyoto. Well, having some oversight, some degree of oversight, might have said, hey, Goodfeel, this game you're making looks like a neat idea. We already have a 2D Kirby game going on right now. Do you want to? Because remember, there was that year we had 2 2D Kirby games. Now they were very different.
Yeah, I mean, I think they came out like within a year. Was it like 2010?
Yeah, and within a year of each other. They were very
different
different games, but like if there was maybe a more centralized hand at the wheel, they might have gone, one of these isn't as interesting as the other. Maybe we should repurpose this.
Yeah.
But wasn't Kirby's Epic Yarn originally not a Kirby game? And
That's
Nintendo
right.
asked them to make it a Kirby
Yeah.
game. So clearly Nintendo, there was some oversight. And the oversight was make another 2D Kirby game.
Yeah, I guess the question, but that would raise the question, like, there's oversight, but is it joined up?
Right.
And I think that it may well be part of the kind of purpose of this new panel, is that to ensure that there's perhaps a more, and especially I think dissolving eventually. They've talked about the 3DS. They'll keep selling it as long as there's kind of demand there, and then there'll be more games and everything. But to a large extent, they've kind of dissolved the console handheld barrier with Switch, and that's good. That's the primary platform going forward, and all that. So you'd hope that plus, perhaps changing the decision-making process would make for a more sort of strategically kind of coherent software library going forward.
Well, and maybe the other way to look at it is they actually get the ability to say, okay, resources actually are fungible now. By having one team that's overseeing everything that's being greenlit, they might say, hey, we need to shift some resources to this other project. And, hey, you already know how to work on Switch. We can make that call because we're the executive board. We have that power. I mean, ultimately, Furukawa is going to be the executive producer listed on every game that comes out of Nintendo. This is doing what an executive producer does. Like, this is the one job. Who gets the money?
Yeah, and a lot of it's just going to be a question of, okay, these are the 4 people that are going to be kind of feeding into his decision-making process. But, a lot of it's going to be about what he takes from what they give him. Like that's it's hard to imagine that you're not going to get some really valuable input from the kinds of design talents that Nintendo has to offer. But ultimately, he has to make decisions on a business level, and but at the same time, he has to kind of take into part the game inside. So it's going to be balancing his sort of inputs with his prerogatives as the chief executive, and time will only tell how well that plays out. I don't really see there's anything fundamentally issue with the process. It's just you never know how well these people are going to work together until it actually happens.
Yeah, I think it might be Yabuki instead of Nagoshi, because Yabuki oversees the Mario Kart franchise at this point. He launched ARMS. There's some like people at Nintendo involved with the people who will be on this board, or the people on this board have put out some weird shit. Like I'm not so worried that they're gonna, not be able to make neat stuff because they're gonna be super conservative. Koizumi is going to be on this board, no doubt, because he got made a director. He's going to get to make whatever the F he wants because he's on this board. Like, he's going to go, this is the game we should make. This is a 20 million seller. This needs to go.
Super Ponzi Brothers. We have to greenlight this.
Super Ponzi Brothers. You know what? That might already exist. Somebody's probably already made that in like Shockwave Flash.
Yeah, in this day, it's probably on Steam.
In like 2009, that probably came out right around the time of just the complete meltdown.
Yep.
You know what?
Today I learned the existence of a Forbes licensed something like Ultimate Corporate Warrior game or something.
Are you fucking for real?
Yeah, it's I don't know. It was like tweeted by like Cool Box Art Twitter account, and I was like, well, that's got to be fake. And then I saw a video of it, and I was like, wow, they really pushed that joke really far.
That should have been fake.
You know, I followed the link, and like, oh, it's got a Moby Games entry, and it's on Wikipedia, but it doesn't cite its sources. Oh, it's an elaborate fake. But then I found like a 2012 article in PC Gamer about it, and yeah,
maybe they time traveled to make the joke.
How deep does this go?
Probably it is a joke, but it's a joke that exists.
What I want to have happen is that when people go Google that to find out what Guillaume's talking about, no one can find the results. Because there's like a right to be forgotten gets kicked in by Forbes in the intervening time between the edit, and then just people think Guillaume's just completely lost his mind.
Yeah, that is an important right. That's probably what the right I would hold most dear.
I disagree because if you're Forbes and you greenlight an Ultimate Corporate Warrior game, you don't have the right to be be remembered forever. You should have to live with that decision for life.
Mm-hmm.
If the podcast ever disappears from the internet, we'll know who to blame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Greg just invoking that right.
I think we all have things that we would rather be forgotten from.
Greg will have a code. It'll just be hot takes, and then everything will just disappear. Like that's the kill. Yeah. That's the kill word. The kill phrase right there.
Is that his RFN safe word? His hot takes? Is that what you're telling me?
The cow jumped over the moon. That's actually what it is.
Oh, okay, that's fair then. All right, we should probably move on to different email.
Or we should end the show.
Oh my God, what happened? Holy shit! I just saw the time.
That first quick email was like over 20 minutes, by the way.
I know, I saw. All right, well,
it's eight separate franchises to comment on. So
that's true. We killed 4 franchises.
You don't do that. You don't do that willy nilly, do you? I mean, they are very sort of dispensable. I mean, that's kind of the whole point.
It's true. You know what? Yeah. No, I mean, Nintendo said it's the whole point, so we could do it too. All right, well, that's going to do it for email. We killed off a bunch of email because we didn't get to them, but we'll get to them next week. I always save the ones we don't get to this week and then roll them over to next week. Or in this case, rolled one over 2 weeks now, so we'll get to it. I swear we'll get to it.
It's like a lottery, you know. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
That's right. But you can send your email to add to the pile to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. We really appreciate your email, and we're going to push ourselves next week to answer 3 whole emails. So, with that, it is time for us to wrap this show up. Greg, what is our end music this week?
Well, I want a quick little mention last week when you did the Trauma Team music. I was like, there's something familiar about this. I don't think it's a coincidence. So I checked back, and after you compiled some of your requests that you talked about not getting used, a week later the draft is an annual event. In the 2017 draft, you used a different Trauma Team song.
Damn right I did.
Passing over your own recommendation to do that. So, I feel I have what you might call a sort of abnormal affinity for accidental annual traditions and alliterations, clearly. I think from now on, especially as the words team and trauma figure prominently in the word cloud around the bills in my mind. The Trauma Team, or at least Trauma Center song, should accompany the week before the draft the week of the draft every year.
Okay, with this stupid.
That is a thing
plan.
that from now on, I'm very, very happy to institute that tradition.
I became aware that I had done this when I went and looked at the spreadsheet to add it back and went, oh shit.
It's different songs, it's fine. And in the spirit of that, for this week's pick that I've made, I've got a song from a game I've used twice before, believe it or not, but the soundtrack is amazing. It is one of my favourite soundtracks going, and it is in honour, if you haven't already guessed, of the fact that DKC Tropical Freeze is coming to Switch. It just came out a few hours ago on the eShop as we record here. I said the first one of these we ever did was a Tropical Freeze song. We did another one sometime later. This may well be the last time we use it, but it is a ridiculously awesome soundtrack, so I'm not going to rule anything out. But this, to take us out this week, the pure joy of Windmill Hills. If this doesn't make you feel better, I don't think anything will. It's just, it's pure audio joy now being dispensed into your ears.
I don't have any follow-up to that, so bye everybody.
Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.